Yes, the lesson I've learned, and I try and counsel other entrepreneurs, is it's so easy to fall in love with your own product without understanding what market it fits into. So the most expensive elements of phase two, which wound up being close to $75 to $100 million worth of capital, is I would fly around the world with this subset of chips in a packet, making bold, crazy claims as to what the chips would do. And end users, even the most progressive ones, would look at me and say, all right, I actually get this data. Well, where's the condenser? We don't have it. Where's the evaporator? We don't use it. What Freon do you use, Tony? We don't have Freon. It's a solid state system. And they just look at you dumbfounded.
Welcome to Triangle Tweener Talks, a weekly podcast by builders for builders where we explore the startup journey from the idea to the exit and all the lessons in between, with an exclusive focus on founders from the Triangle region of North Carolina. Now here's your host, serial founder and general partner of the Triangle Tweener Fund, Scott Wingo.
First, a huge thank you to our gold sponsors. Today we are featuring EisnerAmper. Whether you're planning international expansion, M&A, or IPO, EisnerAmper offers stage-specific solutions to help you reach your next milestone. Our dedicated technology practice delivers hands-on outsourcing, accounting, tax, and advisory support. We'd also like to recognize our silver sponsors. Today we are featuring Automated Consulting Group. Ready to transform your business with AI? Automated Consulting Group delivers executive workshops, fractional CAIO guidance, and custom AI solutions built for your business. Finally, thank you to our sponsor, Extensis HR. So that founders can focus on innovation for over 25 years, Extensis HR has leveraged a people-first approach, customer-centric mindset, and deep industry expertise to ensure employers have the tools they need to stay competitive in today's market. Thank you again to all of our sponsors for supporting Triangle Tweener Talks and the entire Triangle startup community. It takes an ecosystem to build a thriving community, and sponsors like these are very valuable, and they contribute their time and also help sponsor things like the Triangle Tweener Talks and Triangle Tweener Times. Thank you. Welcome back to Triangle Tweener Talks. Last week we had part one of our two-part conversation with Tony Atti, the CEO and co-founder of Phononic. Back in part one, Tony was working through JPL, then went to venture capital, and then launched his first deep tech company in the middle of the 2008 financial crisis. What could go wrong? Here in part two, we go past that origin story to execution. Tony's going to tell us how they built Phononic, some of the science behind their technology, some of the tough parts about productization and scaling. And then when you build this horizontal technology, there's lots of different verticals you can go into. For a while, they explored several of these and then just recently decided to focus in on one. We're going to learn all about that, where they're focusing, how it's going, and what's next for Phononic. Enjoy this conversation with Tony Atti, one of my favorite entrepreneurs in the Research Triangle Park area, CEO and co-founder of Phononic. Nice. So you got your $2 million from Venrock, and you knew there was three problems to solve, and then you just went and poked around in the universities to see who would be the people to solve those three things.
You got it.
Give me the layman's version of the three. Was it like
material science, semiconductor processing, and semiconductor packaging? And this ain't complicated, Scott. Those are the three metrics that every semiconductor application has to master. At the materials level, are your physics good enough to affect the outcome you desire? Transistors did it with electrons. Solar did it with photons. Someone needed to do it with phonons, heat. That was the material science piece. The second is any semiconductor material is only as good as the deposition of the the conductive metal that goes on it. If that adhesion is bad, you lose all of your material goodness in resistive heating. If that metallization is good, you get all of the materials properties converted into the effect, in our case, cooling, that you're looking for. And the
is that a substrate, or is that a different word? Is that the substrate?
We wouldn't use substrate. We would use ingot or active material, but it's analogous. So in wafer in material science wafering, you have an ingot of some kind. In wafer level processing, there's typically a metallization. And then in wafer level packaging, there's some kind of ceramic substrate packaged around the material that gives you your thumbnail size device. So those three areas, if done in concert with one another, generate three technical metrics, Scott, that matter in my world. When you power a chip, what's the absolute coldness it can deliver? Point two, how much electricity does it consume to give you that coldness? And then the third and most overlooked one, how much work per unit area can the chip do? Can it pump a lot of heat or just a little bit? It can be as cold as ice, but if it can't do any work, it's not very effective. So those three technical metrics immediately led to dramatic gains in those three commercially meaningful areas. And then we had a company.
And I imagine you went into this. It's kind of funny how your prior experience really kind of, it can be a very enabling thing for not sure you. I'm sure you worked really good. You went into this university thing knowing how to get the contracts right, so they didn't each own 66%.
Exactly, you nailed it, Scott. We did it right. We did it right the first time. I had a professional team ready to take on the role of the university professor the minute I saw technical proficiency. So without question, having seen that movie before, it was super helpful.
Isn't that funny, like how that kind of, like if you hadn't done that, maybe this whole thing wouldn't have worked out because you would have stumbled into a trap there or something.
Without question.
And then, so you're just doing like, can I even build one of these things? You're not even thinking. It seems like all this stuff I read, like, you know, what NVIDIA like is always dealing with is they'll have a new, like the Blackwell system, and then it'll work in the proof of concept, and then scaling it is always like really hard to scale and manufacture, and then all the pieces that have to come together. So you're not even worried about that in this part of the story. You're just like, get one working. Or get three pieces working, and then we'll put them together and see if they work together.
So it's funny you mention that, because back to the due diligence before I even started the company, my goodness, I heard persuasive cases from all of academia and R&D that each person had perfected one of the three, but no one was tackling the problem altogether. So to the universities, to their credit, one was doing materials, one was doing processing, and one was doing modeling of the materials and the processing together. And that was sort of the recipe book that we needed to start building stuff. And the first chips were made in Centennial Campus and worked.
Do they have like I guess they're handmade. They're like solder and stuff. Like,
yeah.
How do you make our first? Okay. Yeah. So it's not like you have a bunny room and all that kind of jazz.
We did have a bunny room, but not nearly the kind of bunny room I have right now. The real question is what was in the bunny room. So back then there was one sputter tool and a hand crank press putting the devices together, where now it's, my goodness, it's space age, like fully automated and high volume and high throughput.
So you do these three university things. Obviously, spoiler alert, they're going to, seems like they're going to work out in this part of the story. And then do you have to go get more money at each one of these milestones? I imagine there's like, you're kind of, it feels like that probably took $2 million just to get to feasibility.
Actually, all in feasibility was roughly $10 million from when we founded the company through 4 or 5 years of just fundamental R&D to get to thumbnail-sized chips with cooling performance that I'll say is commercially meaningful. And each step along the process, I was arguing to investors that once we reached these technical metrics, market opportunities would open up. So if you look at the phases of Phononic, the first phase, fundamental material science development, technical chip proof of concept, was probably done on anywhere from $10 to $15 million to get from that raw idea to a reduced to practice chip that had performance that I could connect the dot to a product in a market.
What's phase two? Let's go through the phases. This is a good framework.
Phase two was way more expensive and way more unexpected.
Is that manufacturing or like?
Yes. The lesson I've learned, and I try and counsel other entrepreneurs, is it's so easy to fall in love with your own product without understanding what market it fits into. So the most expensive elements of phase two, which wound up being close to $75 to $100 million worth of capital, is I would fly around the world with this subset of chips in a packet, making bold, crazy claims as to what the chips would do. And end users, even the most progressive ones, would look at me and say, all right, I actually get this data. Like, well, where's the condenser? We don't have it. Where's the evaporator? We don't use it. What Freon do you use, Tony? We don't have Freon. It's a solid state system. And they just look at you dumbfounded. And they say, well, where does and you're watching them take your chip and jam it into something and you're freaking out. So we literally had to invent the mechanical, the thermal, the software, the firmware, the electronic controls to productize the chip. And then we had to build from scratch the supply chains to make all this stuff, because you can't just airdrop into a classical CM making refrigerators for Frigidaire and say, hey, adopt your line to my platform when there's no commonality for any of the equipment. So when people think of Phononic and they look at the capital we've raised, they sometimes mistakenly associate it with, well, semiconductors just have expensive fabs. That is not it. The big chunk of capital we raised is because we had to productize, improve the technology in an end application for markets and investors to take us seriously.
Yeah, because it's so different, you can't just plug it into a piece of something that exists.
Nope.
It's just like you've got to build the whole, you've got to just show them how it all is going to work.
And the mistake I made candidly is we did it all in 3 independent, disparate, massive markets, which is an expensive way to do it. So It wasn't just that we took on the burden to productize it to prove a point, but we did so in HVAC, cold chain, refrigeration, vaccines, and merchandising, and to a certain extent, data centers all at once. And that was a very expensive and painful posture that really put the company at risk at the time we were in it. And it's remarkable to see how far we've since come when we decided to focus and really lock in.
I think when I first met you, it was largely HVAC with a little bit of thinking about cold center. And that, so when was this phase? So this was like 2010 to 2015?
I tend to go in 5-year increments. So 2008 to 2013-ish was fundamental R&D chip development. 2013 to 2018 or 19 was productization, invention of the ecosystem built around the chip. And then the last 5 years is really where we've taken off commercially and financially, when we decided which markets made the right product market fit and which others we should license the technology instead to third parties who knew what they were doing better than us.
Okay, let's go through each of those. Let's talk a little bit about HVAC and then cold chain and then data centers. So are those still the 3 you're in, or are you just like, is one become the lion's share and that's the primary focus?
So roughly 4 or 5 years ago, our product roadmap was 50 miles wide and a 1/4 inch deep across those 3 distinct segments: refrigeration for both commercial and vaccine, HVAC for commercial buildings, and data center, where we were embedded in the optical components that allow servers to talk to one another. So the dilemma is, in each one of those segments, at a literal product performance, Scott, we were doing things that the legacy incumbent technology could not do. And that's a very powerful, intoxicating capability.
Because you're solid state, it's smaller, better, faster,
reliability,
less energy.
Sometimes dramatically less energy.
The energy to cooling ratio, the efficiency is probably the right word, is off the charts compared to other technologies. Yeah.
Particularly because the way we operate, a legacy system turns on, has this deep duty cycle, then it turns off, whereas we can instantaneously turn on and off and always reach peak efficient performance because we have a response time in milliseconds, not minutes. So each one of those segments very proudly demonstrated the technical proficiency of what solid state was supposed to do, but Phononic, being the manufacturer of everything, was an expensive way to run a railroad. So with the last funding round, we raised $100 million to now really discern which one of those 3 made the right sense. And then with that capital, go deep in one vertical and license anything that we deemed to be non-core. So instead of just indiscriminately shutting something down, we were able to license the product rights to partners where we attained royalties. They took on the commercial burden. The question was, which one of the 3? Who's your favorite child in that regard? And here's where I lecture and counsel entrepreneurs all the time. You hear product market fit. I'm looking back, I'm proud. We did it the other way. We did market product fit. So do I even like this market? And I don't mind telling you, at the time in data centers, it wasn't called data centers. It was called optical components. And we didn't know if we liked it. We were cooling sophisticated components, but in that world, to geek out for the moment, when you hear NVIDIA talk 100 gig, 200 gig, 400 gig, at those data transmission rates, cooling is a nice to have, but not a must have. And me arguing that I'm mission critical was a difficult argument at that time.
And this is like 2021. Yeah.
And just when we were deciding to make the fateful decision to either license that or close it down, the industry, and I'll just leave it at that, made a dramatic breakthrough, one in particular, to 1.6 terabytes, effectively 8xing all of their competition. And the minute that decision was made, the sheer size of the market for the optical components that we were in went up exponentially. And now cooling of those components became absolutely critical to maintain the right signal integrity as data is communicated within servers. So I don't mind telling you that made it really easy to lock in load on that segment.
And also, I doubt they had another solution that was near the efficacy and the efficiency and all that. Yeah. So it's a perfect point in time in the perfect series. And the only reason that exists, I imagine, is because of accelerated computing and AI.
You got it.
Which is, you've had two interesting things kind of go your way. One of them was oddly COVID, which, cut most people the other way, but you had the ability, suddenly there was this thing that needed to be transported with cold chain, and it was called the vaccine, and you guys were there to help with that. Yes, that was one.
So it's funny, vaccine integrity is a big deal, Scott. And guess what else is? Air quality. So the HVAC systems that we were developing in partners with some colleagues not only had efficiency and performance, but had unparalleled air quality and cleanliness, right? So yes, we were able to tap into that. And then with the AI compute revolution, that simply has exposed now a variety of hotspots across the data center that is now transceivers, optics, GPUs, the ASIC, the switch, even the darn water chiller systems, all have come to life in disparate, unconnected ways. And we've been able to leverage the foothold in optics, where we're now being designed in with the GPU, designed in with the switch. And almost overnight, Scott, the data center has become an all-encompassing thermal hotspot that allows us to connect the dots off a common platform.
And they're using tons of energy. They need the most energy efficient cooling
that they can find.
Yeah.
Yes. So with that, we strategically, over the course of the last year, licensed our vaccine, drug, and merchandising business to a company that we stood up with a past Phononic investor called PeltierPro. Hanson Lee was an early investor. And when he saw this dilemma we were going through, we put a structure together where we spun out our cold chain and grocery business, and he's doing incredibly well. And on the HVAC side, we did a large commercial installation in Paris 2 years ago with a European company called Halton. They licensed that technology and took it from there. So now we have this fundamentally core product IP portfolio. We can license individual product rights to partners for non-core segments. And now we are all in on the data center, which has just become this one big, massive hotspot.
Feel free to answer this how you can. Give us an idea how big is Phononic?
We have about 140 people. We have a 30,000 square foot fab here in Durham, North Carolina, on the western edge of the park, which no one can believe we have, which is hilarious to me. We have a major contract manufacturing partnership with Fabrinet in Thailand. We have a 10-person ops team in Thailand that manages supply chain and sourcing and procurement. We have a 8-person sales team in China for many of our data center optics customers there. So we have really good global geographic coverage. I believe it's close enough to the end of the year where I can say we are going to exit Q4 EBITDA positive.
Nice.
Which is great for the home team. I have had to revise my 2026 forecast up 3 times in the last month based upon design wins across the data center, not just in optics, but now moving deeper into the server itself. And don't look now, but there may be some cash flow positivity earlier midway through 2026. So we're incredibly
EBITDA
excited.
positive is the first signal you're on your way there. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool. It's funny when I was like looking at Crunchbase's, I did a little research here, and it's it lists your investors, and it's like Vinrock, Goldman Sachs, Triangle Tweener.
There you are. Look,
boom, powerhouse.
The bluest chip in the pile. So we're delighted.
You were kind enough to let us throw a very small amount. I bugged you for a very long time, and you're finally like, okay, Scott, we'll let you on the cap table.
Part of the responses were, I take my fiduciary responsibility to investors incredibly personally. It's a huge burden entrepreneurs carry. And this is my home now. I've been here almost 20 years. I've raised my kids here, and I want those investors in the triangle to be proud of us. And nothing's ever risk-free, but we're in a really good spot right now. We're really excited where we're headed.
All right. I promised I'd get you out here in 2 minutes. You also spend a lot of time, especially if I ever find any deep tech folks, I tend to send them your way because it's like your jam. Any other advice? You've given some good nuggets along the story here. Any other frequently asked questions you get and how you counsel founders?
Yeah, I'll say there's maybe 3 that pop up, some from financial to operational to strategic. I find a lot of entrepreneurs, and it doesn't matter, Scott, if you're on firmware, software, enterprise, it doesn't matter. I find entrepreneurs every day fall in love with their solution, which is great. I mean, we're all tech geeks at the end of the day at some level, but I can't stress enough that market product fit, not product market product fit. Do you want to be in this market? Do you like it? And if you do, why? Is it the channel strategy? Is it the ability to build a moat? Is it the pricing power? Is it the definition of the customer persona that is attractive? I find that not enough entrepreneurs do that. We didn't. We went after a market just because it used a crappy compressor and I wanted to beat it. Not a good reason, right? And I learned that lesson the hard way. And then once you find the market that you really like, what are your product's attributes that allow you to drive a financial and a competitive threat inside that market that protects you? That's sort of the first one. The second one, my gosh, has been written about 8 million times, but I still needed it hammered into my head. Once you find that, ruthless and relentless focus is just absolutely critically needed once you've exploited that opportunity. I'll find entrepreneurs who they'll meet with me regularly and show me their progress, and they've exploited a segment of that market product fit, and then will come to me and say, and look, now we can tangentially go into this. I'm like, wait a minute. You just got the fit that you've been dreaming of. You're exploiting an opportunity in the market. Own it. Just show me how you're going to get to 80, 90% share in that segment, because that will fund all of your other stuff. And then maybe the third piece, and this tends to be something unique to areas that are outside the valley in terms of entrepreneurial aspirations. You're going to work as hard for $100 million outcome as you are for $1 billion outcome. It's the same amount of time and effort and intensity. So dream big about what you think your company can be, and then work backward and put bite-sized steps that are fundable in place. And there's the one lesson I think we've learned at Phononic in terms of exits or where we want to be. The minute you start operating with a prescribed outcome in mind, we're going to sell the company, you behave in that manner, when the answer should just be, we're going to build a big, disruptive, globally impactful company that reaches these kinds of aspirational levels, and working backwards is going to take me X dollars to get there. You pursue that path, and exits will reveal themselves along the way. So a bit long-winded, but those are sort of the 3 things I tend to talk about in my engagements.
Those are perfect. I love it. Well, I am really glad we found this time. I learned a ton. You're inspirational. And when you say, focus on something and grind it out, 4 million miles, like that's pretty good evidence that you're not just flying to Hawaii for a vacation. I don't
know.
No,
this is, yeah, we've done some crazy stuff. And once upon a time, Scott, you told me how important grit is. And that's a key feature for entrepreneurs, to really have that grit and
that's what it is. Yep. Absolutely.
And it gets there. So go Bills.
All right. We appreciate you building in the triangle and building a great company, and excited to see where you take it next. Congrats on all the success.
Thank you, Scott, for the support.
Triangle Tweener Talks is hosted by Scott Wingo, presented and produced by Triangle Tweener Fund, with creative assets and design support from our friends at Walk West. That's it for today's episode. A big thank you to our guests, sponsors, and the team that makes this podcast possible. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who loves the startup stories coming out of the Triangle. Thanks for listening. We will see you next time on Triangle Tweener Talks.